So excited to be here. Y'all have seen me speak before. I'm not going to do that, so I'm just going to kind of be out here with you today. I love these two topics so much. When we think about creating change, nowhere do we need change more than we need change in, for women in business in general, and certainly women in the electronics industry. When we think about that, deploying our critical thinking skills is going to be critical. These things come together so well. So today, we're going to talk about three things together. We're going to talk about the critical thinking skill stack. We're going to talk about how to build your critical thinking muscle. And we're going to do a really fun exercise for that part. And then we're going to talk about how to showcase those skills. And then I have a special surprise for you at the very end. So let's start by thinking about what is critical thinking. So when I say to you, critical thinking, what's that kind of definition that comes up for you? First, who's our mic runners? Because y'all, I forgot to say something, but I am going to need mic runners. Okay, we got them coming. When I say critical thinking, what do you think? What do you think critical thinking is? Raise your hand if you have a thought. We have a couple here in the back. Stephanie?
When I think about critical thinking, I think, how is that going to impact? I always think about the impact of what I'm thinking about.
Yep.
Whether it's critical or non-critical. Who am I impacting? What am I impacting? And if I'm bringing about a change, or is it status quo?
Yeah,
if it's status quo, I take it out. But it doesn't have to be out of the box. It can be in the moment. But I think about how many people, who's the recipient of that thinking.
I love that. The change strategist in me, my heart's going pitter-patter, so thank you for that. We have someone else in the back. When I say critical thinking, what comes? And please say your name when you jump on the mic.
My name is Ashley.
Hey, Ashley.
When I think of critical thinking, I think about logic, following a process to understand who, what, when, where, why, how, and question every thought that comes next. Why would you think that? Why would you do that? Why would this person think that? Why would they do that? To try to come to a conclusion.
Yeah, I love that. Those are two very different and great examples of what critical thinking is. I'm going to share with you a definition that we're going to use together for the next hour that we're together. So as we are talking about critical thinking, I want you to think of it in this way. By the way, this is the only slide you'll have to read in my entire presentation. So let's take a look at the slide. Critical thinking is a type of thinking in which you analyze, question, and interpret so that you can evaluate information to make a decision, propose a solution, okay? So when we think about critical thinking, and oh, by the way, y'all do have a guide on critical thinking, as well as, not yet, but in a little bit, we're going to do a little assessment. You have that assessment in PDF format as well. So you have those tools at your disposal. Before we jump into the critical thinking skill stack, the thing I want you to know is that leaders are looking for critical thinkers. More than any skill, Jackie mentioned it in the beginning. They want to find, hire, and promote people who demonstrate critical thinking because it saves them a whole lot of time, right? They do not have to figure out every solution to every problem. And they know that if they've got critical thinkers, they have the execution in competent hands where they can go execute. Y'all leaders don't want to make all the decisions. They don't. They want to hire people who can apply their critical thinking skills, propose solutions, make decisions, and go execute. And when you learn that skill, you increase your level of promotability and influence in your organization and as you look to build your career, whether that's in your current organization or looking at other opportunities. It is the number one skill that leaders are looking for, and guess what? They don't teach it in school. They don't. And critical thinkers are not born. We're not born with a critical thinking gene or without it. It is this 6 skills combined together that give us that competency. So we've talked about what's in it for leaders. Well, what's in it for you? I wouldn't be a good change strategist if I didn't get to the what's in it for me, now would I? So let's talk about what's in it for you. How many of you can think of last week or a year ago when you thought everything was okie dokie fine and you went into work and all of a sudden you feel like, oh, that's a threat to my career right there, that thing I just saw? Anybody have had that example? So shout out for me, what are some things when we think about walking that career tightrope, what are some things happening to you, happening to a colleague, happening to someone you know today that could be a threat to your careers or to your current position? What are some examples? AI, absolutely. That one always comes up. What? Pardon? Outsourcing, 100%. What else? Age, yep, absolutely. We are either too young. We're like Goldilocks and the 3 bears, right? We're either too young or too old. We're never just right. What else? Acquisitions, 100%. All of these things, when they come up, they make us feel like we're walking that career tightrope, don't they? Here's what I'll tell you. Honing your critical thinking skill is magical because it's going to protect you. It's either going to protect you because you're going to use your critical thinking, you're going to see it coming, you'll create a plan, and if it happens, you'll go on to your next cool career, or you're going to be part of that solution, and people are going to look to you to lead. The other thing that critical thinking does is it helps us to make better decisions. We're able to make better decisions. And when it comes time to negotiate in our careers, we're able to be better negotiators, whether that's for a salary, whether that's to be on a special project, whatever that negotiation is. It also brings anxiety down because not only are we able to make better decisions, but we make them faster. I think one of the most stressful things is unmade decisions. I used to be crippled by unmade decisions. If you would ask me 5 years ago, Carla, how many unmade decisions do you have? I'd be like, oh my gosh, how much time do you have? Because there's a list of them. Who right now, I want you to raise your hand if right now in your personal life or in your business career, you have an unmade decision that's heavily weighing on your mind. Raise your hand high. Who has unmade decisions? And oh my gosh, if you could blow away the clutter, make the decision and move on, how much anxiety would that bring down? How much more effective would you be? I do a little exercise every Sunday night. I call it my Sunday Summit. And one of the questions I ask myself is, what unmade decisions do you have? And my goal is to have 0 in that box. And I do that by applying critical thinking. And I have another little tip that I'll share with you once we get into the critical thinking skill stack. So this is the skill stack. I think what is super cool about this is throughout the 2 days at the summit, I have heard 1 or more speakers mention everything in this skill stack. So if you look at the skill stack, it's not 1 skill, it's 6. And when you pull them all together, this is what creates your critical thinking competency. Now we are going to go through each one of these skills, and I have to ask you, can you hear this like squeaking when I walk? Okay, great, that's good to know, because I like walking around and seeing y'all. All right, let's start with curiosity. I want to take you back to the end of the day yesterday when we had Andrea Klein on the stage, and she talked about learning and curiosity and really understanding her customers' issues so that she could solve those issues, and how much time she spends in curiosity. When we are curious, we approach things differently. When we approach things with an open mind, being curious, asking questions with an intent to learn, We get more information, y'all. And here's the thing I want you to remember about curiosity. It's not enough just to be curious. You also have to be willing to be wrong. Approaching a situation, approaching understanding of someone else's point of view, and being willing to be wrong about the views that you hold. And you do that through curiosity. Because here's what happens. Our brains do not like gaps, right? So we're going to take the information, we're going to thread it together, and we're going to go do something with that information. And if we're not willing to be wrong, and we don't approach it with curiosity, we're going to be making decisions based on incorrect data. When we're not curious, we make decisions. And we make decisions without all of the information that we need in order to make the right decisions. And when we don't suspend our belief and our willingness to be wrong, other people are not going to be willing to share information with us. Listening intently is the second skill in the skill stack. And I love this phrase, listen intently. Not just listening. And y'all, by the way, waiting to talk is not the same as listening. If you've ever been in a room with someone and you know they're just waiting to talk, do you feel listened to? No, we don't feel listened to. Listening intently is when we want to understand their point of view. It's when we leave silence after a question. It's when we are fully present, removing all distractions and focusing on the person who we're speaking to. Small things are going to indicate whether or not you are fully present with your conversation partner. I'm going to do a fun little thing here. Who has a cell phone with them? Can you please give me your cell phone, sir? And what's your name? Rob. Thank you, Rob. I will give that back to you in just a moment. So, Rob, have a seat. And I want to ask you a question real quick. Can we have a mic runner, please? Super. Rob's very nervous, y'all. It's going to be okay, Rob. So, Rob, I don't know if you were here yesterday. Or I think you just arrived.
I'm not allowed yesterday. I'm allowed here
that's
today.
right. You are. We did ask you not to come yesterday. I do remember that now. Rob, can you tell me what is your favorite thing about the WE conference so far?
The speakers.
Which one, Rob? Be very specific.
No, all of the speakers. All the speakers I've learned a nugget, one or two nuggets out of each speaker, which is, that I can take away, which is something that's for me, that's memorable. That I can take away. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so just the presence of this cell phone, did anybody feel like maybe my full attention wasn't really on Rob? Did I look at it? No, but it's in the room, it's in my hand. And just simply having this with us when we are listening to people signal that there's probably something else more important than you going on in the room. So putting that, I'll give you your cell phone back now,
Okay.
Rob. Yes, because we don't really want to keep it. But it's just something to think about. It's moving those distractions and being very, very deliberate about how you listen intently. I once had a gentleman who worked on a different team. So I had where are my Avnet peeps in the room? Yeah, so I used to work at Avnet. And there was a gentleman by the name of Flavian Herpin, and he, was living in Europe. He came to the United States specifically to meet teams. And when he walked in the room, he did not have a cell phone, he did not have a laptop, and this is what he would do. I told him afterwards, I'm like, your mom would be so proud of you. You're such a great listener. But he would fold his hands on the table, and when people were introducing themselves, he would look directly at them, and he would say, thank you. And when the next person was introducing themselves, he had his complete and total attention on that person. He is the best example I have ever seen of listening intently. So think about that, the cell phone, and how can you listen more intently the next time you have an opportunity to listen and learn from others. The third skill in the skill stack is to analyze information. So we're going to collect all this data, we're going to collect all of this information, we're going to collect opinions and ideas, and now it is our job to analyze the information. Part of analyzing the information is figuring out what's fact and what is opinion. This can be very, very challenging because people we know and respect are going to give you data that feels like a fact, and we naturally go, oh, that's a fact, I need to include that in my analysis. Not always the case, right? Because remember, we want to fill the gaps. Our brains do that naturally. So really understanding what is fact, what is opinion, whose opinions are part of the mix, where's the data that I can collect to now go make a great decision. One of my superpowers is I'm very nerdy, so we've got that. But I am a Lean Six Sigma Master Black Belt. That's a lot of words. All it really means is I love data. And one of the reasons I love data is because data diffuses emotion. It takes us back to the facts, and it allows us to make really great decisions. And part of that process is gathering all that information and offering solutions. So now you've done the action, now we're going to go into the 3 things you're going to do as a critical thinker. So you're going to offer solutions. The very first thing, which is not always obvious that we have to do in offering solutions, is understanding the problem. Has anyone ever been in a room where you're brainstorming, you're trying to solve problems, people are throwing out all kinds of ideas, and before you know it, we don't even know what problem we're trying to solve anymore? Yeah. Great ideas just may or may not solve the problem. One of my favorite questions to ask when that starts is, hang on a minute, help me understand, what problem are we trying to solve here? Let's define the problem first and make sure that anything we decide to do is going to bump up against it and solve it. I love when we as critical thinkers come up with 2 options to solve a problem. It shows some diversity of thought, and I especially love it when one of them is super, super simple. Usually the more simple the solution, the cheaper it is to implement, the easier it is to implement, and it's actually more likely to solve the problem. So when you are a critical thinker, you can bring all that information together and look for the simplest solution that's going to attack the problem and move you forward. If you get past 2 potential solutions, I'll say you can go to 3, but no more than that, because it really starts to get cloudy. If you've got a strong recommended solution, go with that. 2, try to keep to 2 and keep it just as super simple as you possibly can. The next skill in the skill stack is to make decisions. We wait to make decisions. We let them weigh us down. Decisions take up our mind space. Critical thinkers, they make decisions based on data, facts, and information. They make those decisions and then they take action. They go implement. They don't ask other people, for permission, right? They've already done that work of analyzing and bringing in information. Their leaders are counting on them to make decisions and go implement. And when you do that, you take stress off of you. Think of all those unmade decisions. If you are interested in this really interesting exercise, every Sunday night, sit down and write a list of every unmade decision in your life. And see if you can't make a decision by the next Sunday. And do your best to get that down to 0. Here's a trick with making decisions. Usually we're ruminating about it because we're afraid we're going to make the wrong one. True? Well, guess what? Make the decision, and if you get new information, make a different decision. There's no limit as to how many decisions you can make. So make it, execute, take steps forward, and if something changes, use that new information to pivot. And this is also a tip when you're talking to your leaders. What I don't want you to do is make a decision, go back, and then apologize for the first one, and explain, over-explaining, y'all. I'm just going to close my eyes. You don't have to admit, but sometimes we have a problem with over-explaining. Just saying, sometimes we do. instead of going back and over-explaining and saying, well, I tried this, and this is why I did it, and now I don't think it's going to work, simply share the new information, the new direction, and the new decision. You made the best decision you could with the information you had available. You now have new information, and you're making a new one. It really, really is that simple. The other thing that critical thinkers are great at is communicating crisply. Understanding their audience, communicating their ideas, their decisions, and their recommendations in a very clear, crisp way. When you look at the picture of that stained glass window, you can't quite see what's beyond it. This is what happens when we over-explain, we give too much information, we talk about all the background we did, the reason why we think the way that we think, the research that we read, and then somehow, some way, we finally get to what we're recommending. It's a lot like the stained glass window. There's a lot of stuff in the way. And the people you're talking to can't see what it is you're trying to convey. And the more clear and crisp you can get, you're going to get to that vision on the right, or it's very clear. For me, the secret to communicating crisply is always sharing your ideas, your recommendations, or the actions that you're going to take in 2 to 3 short sentences. 2 to 3, that's it. And then at the end, you're going to ask great questions. You're going to ask questions that allow other people, if they're interested, if they have a question about the decision that you've made. So you may ask questions like, what questions do you have for me? How do you see this impacting your teams? And then begin that conversation. So those are the 6 skills in the critical thinking skill gap, or skill stack. Now we're going to talk about your critical thinking potential skill gap. So you all have an assessment on your table. So do me a favor, grab your assessment. So you have this in hard copy. You also have this assessment in the app. So you've got it digitally as well. And here's what I want you to do. If you would turn with me to it's like page 3. So it's where it says be curious, and you've got a couple of blocks there. We've talked about what each of these skills are in the skill stack. I'm going to have you do an assessment, and then we're going to do a fun exercise with it. So this is going to be the silent part, and then we're going to do a group roundtable discussion here afterwards. I want you to think about each of the critical thinking skills in the skill stack, and I want you to rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 5, 1 being I really don't exercise this skill at all, to 5 being I am completely competent in this skill. And you're going to rate yourself on each of the 6 skills. First, you're going to rate yourself, where are you today sitting here at the conference in that skill? On a scale of 1 to 5, how would you rate yourself? And if you think 6 months from now, where would you like to be in that skill? And then calculate the competency gap. So let's say be curious. You say, you know what, I'm a 2. I'd like to be at a 4. Your gap's going to be a 2. Subtract 2 from 4. Then on the very last page, I want you to put the skills in order of the skill gaps, or the gap score. So your very highest gap score will be at the top. And then just list the skills and circle the one skill that you're going to commit to closing that gap for in the next 6 months. I want everybody to get ready, because I want you to say out loud, which of the 6 skills is it that you are going to commit to closing that competency gap in? So say it loud and proud. I'm going to count. Are you all ready? You're all ready? Okay, let's make it loud. Okay, I'm going to say count to 3, and then let me know. 1, 2, 3. Lots of different skills that you are going to commit to closing the gap on. I'm going to have you do a fun breakout where at your round tables, you're going to talk about which skills you're going to work on closing the skill gap, and what are some things that you could do, actively do, commit to do, that would indeed help close that skill gap. Here's something really cool about this. When you identify actions that you can take many, many times, that single action will actually close the gap in multiple of the skills. It's not always a one-for-one. So when you're closing the gap in one, you're going to be closing the gap in others. Then when we come back, you're going to share the coolest, most innovative ideas that you came up with at your table. And then I'll share with you some ideas as well that will help you close those skill gaps. We've got a couple of mic runners. I'm so curious to learn who has a really cool, innovative idea that your table came up with on how to close one or more of the critical thinking skill stacks. Woo! Hand went up like straight up over here. And she's standing up. I love
One,
it.
because my previous boss is over there. I don't know where she is. And she's going to be super proud of our decision, Crystal Jackson, wherever you went. So one of my knowledge gaps is communicate crisply, also with listening, because I hate the silence. So like when we're working with an employee or we're having a corrective conversation, when they just go quiet because they either don't understand, they don't want to sound stupid, or they're frustrated, I want to jump in and guide the conversation a little bit more. And so for many years, she said, like, just sit in the silence. So we talked about just be okay with it and smile and make eye contact and sit there. And I'm still not great at it, but I think in the end, it'll also help me hear a little bit more of what they're saying and not try to capitalize the conversation. And then my communication is clearer because I gave them time to process and be on board with what we're saying. So
I love it. Yay, I love that. Y'all, there is nothing more magical than silence. She's right. If you don't rush to fill it, they will, and you'll be amazed at what you will learn. So yeah, I love that. Who else had cool? Right here, yes. And thank you for sharing your name. Please let us know. Your
Oh,
name.
I'm Kylie. Hi. Everybody actually had like different ones, which was kind of cool. But my biggest thing was I need to make decisions. And I think what we all kind of agreed on is that there's different levels of that. Like if I'm trying to decide what to make for dinner, like am I making chicken or burgers? Like I probably should just make the decision. But we talked about like the importance of rumination and sitting on things and like getting more information. So it's kind of a tiered approach to decision making. What can I make a decision on from Sunday to Sunday? What do I maybe need to wait on for a few months to see how the market shifts or whatever, to see, do I sell that stock or do I, go for that new job, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I love the delineation. Thank you for that. Some things need to soak. The trick is be deliberate about, I am deliberately holding off on this decision because of X, Y, Z. I would even go farther and say give yourself a timeline, because otherwise that can linger for a really long time. And the weight of, if you can eliminate the weight of unmade decisions in your life, it will free you up. So yeah. Who else? Over here on this side, anybody have any great examples of what you'll do? Right here, yes. Here comes the mic.
So we had a range. My name is Maria. We had a range at our table, but one of them was, mine was be curious, be more curious. I think we all agreed that we live in a very fast-paced industry and just world. And so we combined the be curious with the listening intently, because I think all of us are just processing very quickly and trying to just get to the bottom of it, right? Or trying to just solve it. And so maybe just taking a moment to realize and recognize that we need to dive in a little bit deeper. And then somebody at our table also said, I tend to be less curious if I agree with the decision. And then so being intentional about being more curious and then more intentional about slowing down to listen, because we're just aware that we are in just a world that we have to kind of react quickly. So while it's a good thing, it's good to maybe take a minute.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. I'm going to share some ideas on some things that you can take and implement. They're not tied to any specific skill stack because, as you will see, there are several of them that are going to go across multiple of the skills in the skill stack. So the first one is to ask more questions, challenging those assumptions, and not just of other people, but of yourself. Why do I think this is a fact? Is this really a fact, or is this my opinion? What assumptions did I make as I was gathering information? And are those assumptions correct? So being super deliberate about asking more questions. Another thing that you can do, and you said it, it's busy. Slow down a little bit, y'all. Just a touch. Let the information in, soak it in. Observe all things. Observe the information. Observe the people. Observe how they interact together. Slow things down. Sometimes we think we have to move fast, and we don't. We can take a pause. It's especially critical if you're in negotiations, right? Negotiations for salary, negotiations for being assigned to a project, negotiating your side of an argument. Slow down and let the other people absorb information as well. The other thing that happens is we have different learning styles, and we tend to think everybody learns like us, right? Some people need that reflective time, and if we don't give them that, we're not going to get the best from them. So slow the conversations and the decisions down. Meditating. So meditation has been around for thousands of years for a reason. It works. And there's lots and lots of different ways and methods to meditate. I love visualization. I have tapes that I use. I'm a big fan of visualization. There's just quiet meditation. I have a very good friend of mine. I think this is so interesting. For years, we talked about visualization, and she's like, tried it, don't see anything. I'm like, no, yeah, you can do it, sister. So I send her tapes, and she'd be like, tried it, just saw a lot of black space. And she sent me an article about a month ago. There's actually a name for this. There's such a thing as people who can't see those mental images, right? So if you've tried it and you're like, yeah, just see black space, you're not alone. This is actually a condition. And there's other things you can do. Journaling is a form of meditation. One way I love to do walks, if any of you follow me on Instagram or LinkedIn, you will know that I do walks and I do like little short videos and, share my thoughts while I'm walking. But I love my walks, and I do also what's called a walking meditation. And what that is I'll deliberately decide when I leave the house, I'm going to listen for a specific sound. It might be leaves rustling. It might be bird song. It might be animals in the brush. But I'll listen for that while I'm walking. And it completely clears my mind, and I focus on that sound. Or I'll look for a color in nature. I'll see a red flower and be like, I'm going to look for red while I'm on my walk. And it forces you to focus. And it's a form of meditation. So, try different methods until you find one that works for you. I promise there is one that works for you. The other thing is to question assumptions. We talked about this a lot. Anytime you find and it's hard to catch yourself making an assumption, isn't it? It's hard because we think it's fact. I've already pulled it in. So take some time to question assumptions of yourself. What are you assuming about the situation and others? And ask. Talk to me about how you know this to be true. Is this an assumption or a fact? And have that conversation. Okay, everybody take a deep breath. We are not talking about the presidential debate. And I want you to engage in debate. Was anybody on a debate team in college or high school? Anybody in the room? Got one person on a debate team. Well, very well done, sister. We have one person. Yeah. But it's really interesting if you find yourself on opposite sides of a decision or a solution with someone. Just say to them, you know what? Let's just kind of have some fun with this. You take 10 minutes to argue my side, I'll take 10 minutes to argue your side. Let's see what we come up with together. You might change your mind. You might not. At the minimum, you're going to hear information that's going to really help you move forward. And many times, if you take just that moment to switch sides, you can come to common ground. So try it. Try deliberately taking the other person's side. Play games. Yeah, card games. Anything that involves strategy. Backgammon, chess. Do crossword puzzles. Has anybody in here ever done a Sudoku, the numbers game? I'll tell you a funny story about my mother. So I lost my mother 2 years ago. Amazing, amazing woman. And she was slipping a little bit as she got a little older. And I came in one day, and she was sitting on the couch, and she was doing Sudoku. I thought, oh, this is interesting. Because, I mean, she did Sudoku a lot, but I was like, that just, I don't know, something about it seemed different. And I said, Mom, what are you doing? And she goes, I'm doing Sudoku to see if I can balance my checkbook today. And I said, what? She goes, if I can do Sudoku, I can balance my checkbook. There's days I can't. Those are the days I don't touch my checkbook. So here's what my mom knew that I didn't know at the time. She was testing her critical thinking skills, right? And she knew that if she was on it enough that she could do that game, I can go and balance my checkbook. The other thing it does is it builds the critical thinking skills. So anything that has to do with you figuring things out or strategy, if you enjoy those things, go do more of that, because that's actually going to build your critical thinking skills. Okay, this will be fun. I want you to raise your hand if you played an instrument in high school or college. Hands high, up there, very high, very high. Keep it up if you're still playing that instrument. If you're not, put the hand down. We have a couple of people. Can we get a round of applause for the people still playing an instrument? Well done. So here's the cool thing about playing a musical instrument. It changes the way that your brain works. It makes connections that don't happen when we're not playing a musical instrument. And it improves our ability to learn, and it improves our memory. So if you put your flute up after high school, just saying, if it happened, it might be a good time to take it down and start playing that instrument again. Or if you've been thinking, gosh, I wish I knew how to play the guitar, now's a great time to pick it up because you'll be creating those new pathways. You can also start a new hobby. It might be painting, it might be pottery, it might be playing a musical instrument, or it might be something physical. Whatever it is you've been thinking about doing, start that new hobby. It will create different pathways. You'll add some joy to your life, and you'll probably meet some cool people doing it too. And you'll be improving your critical thinking skills. Expanding your knowledge helps incredibly as you are thinking about improving your critical thinking skill stack. Thinking about industry specific, how can you get better? How can you learn more? What can you do to be on top of current issues in your industry? So many ways to do that today. We've got podcasts, there's online courses, there's YouTube videos that are like a minute and a half long. There is association, so y'all are part of the WE organization, right? Engaging in all that your associations have to offer. The mentoring program, I mean, how freaking cool is that? Get a mentor and participate in that. These are all things that are going to expand your knowledge and your capabilities, and they're going to help you with critical thinking. So those are a few ideas on things you can do that not only will increase your skill stack, they're going to add joy to your life as well, right? That's a pretty cool combination. I want to talk about how to showcase your critical thinking skills. Because, great, let's fast forward 6 months, you've closed that gap, you're really focusing on being a better critical, that was nice. You're really focusing on how to be a better critical thinker. How can you demonstrate that at work, in your resume, with interviews? Let's talk about that a little bit. So let's talk about first how you demonstrate it with your leaders. I'll show you how you don't do it at first. So you don't say, well, Joe, I came to that decision through critical thinking. Feeling pretty good about my skill stack. All right, we don't want to do that. But when your leader says, hey, how did you come to that conclusion? What if you said something like, you know what, I talked with Joe, I had an opinion to begin with, I was talking with Joe and he shared with me XYZ that I didn't know. And then I started making that connection to another conversation I had, and I actually changed my my opinion on that. And that's how I came to the decision to move forward with XYZ. You're demonstrating critical thinking, not in a long, complicated story, not in over-explaining. Be careful. How many of you heard me talk about over-explaining before? I think a lot of you in the room have. So just be careful. We don't want to over-explain. I'll give you a couple extra sentences, though. Remember I said share your ideas, your opinions, or your decision in 2 to 3 short, concise sentences. If you're explaining how you or demonstrated critical thinking, I'll give you 5 or 6 sentences. All right, because you might need a couple of more. But talk about what did you do? What did you analyze? Who did you talk to? What decisions did you hold that you now changed? And that is how we demonstrate critical thinking. When it comes to your resume, add keywords around the critical thinking skill stack. You have the data and information in the assessment. You've also got it online. So add it to your intro, add it to your descriptions of your roles so that they can see that you use analysis, that you seek diverse opinions, that you identify specifically problems and offer solutions. That's one of your skill sets. That is what leaders are looking for, both in applications you may put in internally and in one-on-one conversations with your leaders as they're thinking about who are they going to put in the next level. One of our speakers yesterday said, you want to be brought up in the room when conversations are being had about the next promotion, the next project. And this is how you do that. You demonstrate those critical thinking skills, and then your name is going to come up more as someone who can take on more responsibility. I think a place that often gets missed when it comes to resumes is our cover letter. I actually like cover letters better than resumes because I get kind of a flavor of the person. I kind of get to know them. And your cover letter is a beautiful place for you to showcase and demonstrate your critical thinking skills. Thinking through how you make decisions, that you're able to make decisions quickly and execute on those decisions. And you pivot when you need to pivot, right? So think about the description of the skills. What are you especially good at? And how can you weave that inside of your cover letter? And then the last way is during the interview. Most interviews today are situational interviews. Who's ever been in an interview and heard, tell me about a time when, try not to roll your eyes when you raise your hands. Yeah, we've all been there. And that is typically the type of interviews that we're going to get. And you know why? Here's what most people miss. Your interviewer kind of doesn't really care about the end result. They want to know how you think. They want to know how you got to the answer that you got to. They want to know how you made the decision. They're looking for you to demonstrate your critical thinking skills in that moment. It's less about you having the right perfect answer and more about you talking about how you collaborate, how you gather information, and how you make the most important decisions. That's what they really, really want to know. So the next time you're preparing for an interview, think about situations that you've been in and how can you demonstrate critical thinking. Critical thinking is, if you think about it like your personal GPS, you know where you want to go, and you plug it in, and it's going to get you there. And you do that by being really curious, finding cool new destinations, right? Listening intently, bringing in all of that great information, analyzing, making decisions, and moving forward. Now you've got a direction and a path to go. It will change your career, and it will change your business when you really learn how to apply those skills. I promised you something fun. Not that this wasn't, did y'all have fun? Yes, you had fun. Thank you for that. So I promised you something fun, and we're going to do that next. I'm going to ask the lovely Jackie to come up and do a little fireside chat. Give Jackie a big old round of applause, y'all. Jackie is a great example of someone who uses her critical thinking skills incredibly well. So she not
very well.
only, huh?
I said, we're paying you very well.
I know. She not only uses them for which you all have seen throughout our 2 days together, some decisions that Jackie's made to benefit the organization, but also for other people. And the thing I love about Jackie is she uses her critical thinking skills to lift other people up too. So when we were talking about the summit, she said, Carla, I've been hearing a lot from a lot of leaders that people are struggling with critical thinking. And, it would really help and I think it would help you in your business to create a talk and some tools to help people hone their critical thinking skills, because I really think it's a big need in the industry. And I said, I can do that. I don't have it right now, but hold, please. So I, put together the content you saw today, and not only am I so proud to share that with you today, but I've sold it like 4 or 5 times to other organizations, and I shared that with Jackie. She has an eye and an ear for what's really happening in the industry, pulls all that information in to uplift the we community and to help others be more successful. So I appreciate that about Jackie.
Oh, well, thank you.
Yeah, so cool.
Thank you.
So
Thank
cool.
you.
So here's my questions. My first question, which I have here for you, is why is Women in Electronics and We United essential in the technology ecosystem? So you shared on day one that you're bringing in some new folks into the We United fold, representing electronic supply chain and related industries. Why is we essential?
I think it's a good question. Part of what I would want to ask the audience, right? I think that this would be a question we would love. Monica's sitting over there too, because we make decisions as an executive team, me, Monica, and Amy, and along with our board and advisors and things. But I could give you my opinion, but I actually think it would be good to open up and talk to some other people and see what you all think. From my own personal perspective, I think it's essential, more now than ever, to bring together major stakeholders from across the entire tech ecosystem. Of course, the electronic supply chain, we're very committed and foundation in that, but we have so many stakeholders in the electronics supply chain. We have digital aggregators here. We have one end user, hopefully to have more in the next summit. But I think if we all collaborate, if we work together, if we find out how we can benefit each other and ultimately the end user, I think that will be the best use of our time, our relationships, and just really improving things overall. That's my perspective. Wonder, what do you all think about that? What do you think of an industry event that is not strictly electronic component supply chain, but including all of our stakeholders? What do you think about that, Gina?
I think from an individual perspective, and I've heard this, year after year and from many different people, the idea of the networking. And when you talk about bringing in different types of companies, that expands our individual networks to not only other distributors or reps or manufacturers, but end user. I mean, we're meeting people doing things that maybe we never imagined doing. So from an individual member perspective, that's how I think of the value. As the organization brings in more types of companies, that benefits selfishly me individually, right? Each of us individually.
Okay.
She's now the mic runner and the question answerer.
Thank you. So as the token end user in this room, I will say, thanks. So I did come from semiconductors, so I do feel that connection, and Tektronix is a peripheral to the semi world, right? We use semiconductors as well as we sell to semiconductors. It's very much this cyclical cycle. I will say my favorite part about women in electronics is, unlike other communities like Women in Tech or SWE, there is this underlying current of something that keeps us very close in semiconductor and electronics. And I think while it's important to look at expansion, you have something so special here. And to stray away from that and to muddy it is something that has been done. And you have 10,000 women or 1,000 women that can come to an event, and that's great from a personal perspective. Yes, who doesn't want to meet more wonderful women and allies and across the world? But again, there is something so special in this connection that we have, because in electronics, it's different. It's different than when you talk to, say, Raytheon and the DoD and the contracts they're doing. It's not the same. They have their own difficulties, and there's things that we can share and we can help each other. But I just want to make sure you don't lose that special piece.
Good input. Good input. Doris?
I totally understand your point, and I also agree somehow. But on the other hand, when you look at the software industry, the mechatronics industry, the electrical engineering industry, they have similar challenges as the electronics industry. And you guys are talking about challenges and issues that are very present in those industries as well. And I think they would definitely benefit from being part of this group or this community. But maybe you should think about not like one or the other, but maybe keeping what you guys have in terms of that electronics community, but at the same time also opening it up to and expanding to different industries, because I think it could be very beneficial for companies in those other industries.
Good input. Very good input. Okay.
All right. Thank you all for sharing your thoughts there. How would you say that we contributes to the overall growth and development in the industry?
Oh, yeah. Again, I just have to open it up to you all. I mean, for me personally, I believe what you just said, that what we do here applies to so many different industries, right? And there's a lot of cross-pollination that can happen. So I think that there's a place for different organizations, right? Everybody's focused on something different. I think what our focus is leadership, and a certain leadership style that is just, I think has to be intentional. So I think it's a time of growth and expansion for the electronics industry, but the tech world at large. And I think we have to be very thoughtful about how we're approaching the future. I think there's a lot of amazing technology coming and already out there, but how we manage this as leaders is going to impact the masses. So I personally believe that having a focus on leadership is really important.
Yeah, I love that. When you think about challenges that, and you talked a little bit about, that just now, and you talked about it throughout the conference. When you think about challenges that are facing women in the electronics industry, what things is it that we is doing specifically to address those challenges and close those gaps?
That's a very good question. Well, I would say that we're focused on our members. So as we're bringing more people in, we'll have male members too. We have primarily women, and we're always going to focus also on having our dedicated talks around women in leadership. When we do our SWOT analysis, I mean, the real truth of the story is women not supporting other women are our biggest barrier. That's been our biggest setbacks, our biggest challenges have been women not supporting other women. So we do a lot of education on that. Now we have so many that do. What we have found is this is a learning process for all of us, right? We're in the process of systemic change, which is long, hard, and painful and requires a tremendous amount of grace, patience, prayer, right? I wouldn't be here without definitely prayer. You talk about meditation. I pray for this organization all the time and for the right answers, right, to some of these very complicated problems that come up. But I would just say that we have these dedicated programs to help support leaders, men and women, through their leadership journey. It's a really tough, our swimmer, go out there, we get bit by a jellyfish and whatever it's going to be. We need community. I think now than ever, people are isolated. I have had several people say to me they feel like they're on in their own little cubicle, right? Living their lives outside of these types of events, and people are getting lonelier and lonelier as we have more responsibility, more social media, more at-home Teams meetings. People are lonely. And so I think community, for me personally, the more we can bring people together and the more we can talk and think through things together, the better it's going to be.
I love that. You know, I noticed just looking around this room and throughout the events, you have so many young
we do.
people
We have young
here,
people,
which is like super exciting. And we've all seen the data, right? You know, women come into tech and then they drop out.
Yes.
You know, they don't stay in tech. What advice do you have to the young women in the room and just young women in general that are considering tech as a career path?
This is the best place to be. I would say if I look at our electronics industry at large, it's just a small town, right? It's like a great big industry, but a small town. People know each other. We've got, you know, Sam here from the UK and Ruth. Like it just becomes a small town, right? We all end up knowing each other and really loving each other. So I would say that, you know, for starting, we and, you know, of course, Monica and Amy, you know, soul sisters, right? It's just a sisterhood that got us here. It's the connections, it's the relationships. And so I would say it'd be hard to find that somewhere else, right? I would say stick with it, and there's enough people here to support you.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
That's the end of the formal questions. Jackie,
Thank you.
Do a deep breath now.
Okay.
Did you have anything final you wanted to share?
No, I didn't. I would just say thank you. But since I'm up here, might as well take the opportunity. Is there any more questions anyone has before we get into our final speaker that I'm super excited for? But yes. Ooh. Ooh. I'll let you take that one. I'll let you take that one.
Jackie's leaving the stage. I don't know what's happened. I do think you can overanalyze things, right? And that's why make a decision is so important. Because at some point, you know, we've got to stop. We've gathered the information, make a decision, and go. And I think true critical thinkers, that's a superpower for them. We might have to come back and look at it later and see if we made the right decision. But I do think there's a danger of taking too much time to bring all that data information.